All right, everybody, welcome to the LongBox Paradox. I think it's episode 84. I don't remember. So thank you for joining us. I am Dan, your host, with Jennifer at Comic Books Will Break Your Heart, or on YouTube, Comics Will Break Your Heart. Just no books, just comics.
Just comics.
So I wanted to start out the episode because for those who watched our episode book club the other day, you might have known Nat D Comic Queen was under the weather, and there was quite a scare the other day. She ended up having to go to the emergency room. So she's okay, but she has COVID. But I just wanted to wish her and her family a very speedy recovery and to a very healthy recovery. She has been a good friend, frequent guest and supporter of the show, and just a person I just adore and love. So we just want to send our thoughts to her and her family. And we're going to follow up with a story that I'm sick of talking about. A woman the other day posted, her name's Shauna Gore. She came out on Twitter. She was a publicist or public relations with Dark Horse. So this is one of those secret not secrets that have been going around the industry for a while about editor Scott Alley, who also writes BPRD, or he's affiliated with it. His name always appears on the BPRD books, and the fact that Jen and I know about this, and it's been like not a secret, but she came out with very graphic details of her interactions with him, and it's weird when you hear about something, but when you actually read the blow by blows, it's so much worse than what you imagine it could be. And
and I think this is one of those things, like when you hear about, like, you know, not necessarily like theoretical, but you hear like, hey, he's not a good guy, like that's one thing, but then to hear like very graphic, detailed, like my heart goes out to these women who have been experiencing this, like, one, for so long, and that like this was apparently brought up in 2015. So the fact that like we're really just starting to hear about this now, 5 years later, like we should have just believed what was going on 5 years ago, and
this happened 13 years ago or 14 years ago.
Yeah.
So here's where I get angry. Mike Mignola on Facebook makes a post going, "I believe Shauna Gore. I'm cutting all affiliations with Scott Alley." It was not that secret of a thing. Like,
no,
a lot of people knew. There's no way Mignola did not know. No way. No
for
how.
sure. And it's like, once again, why does it take this for you to believe a woman? Why? Because obviously this was talked about by many women, and just now you're deciding to cut ties. And even something else that was brought up was that in companies like this, because he was was he also part of the HR department or something? Like,
I just knew editorial and writer, but I don't know about if he was part of the HR department. But the HR department sounded very inept.
Yeah. And, you know, I think in a lot of these cases, people who are in HR departments that you would go to have no experience in human resources. It's just like, you used to be, you know, an editor, and now you're in the HR department for these companies. So, I mean, it sucks to think that people aren't trained for this. So I think that, like, my first thought, like, I literally like woke up with like 5 people messaging me about this, and I just wanted to like vomit. And I think I even told you, like, I just want to burn down the entire fucking comic book industry at this point. And I'm like, really, like, again this week, like, we're talking about it again, and it's like, I know it's going to be someone else next week. Like, who is it going to be next week?
Yeah, I mean, you and Cineo both were like, I just need to stay off Twitter. For right now. Also, there were some efforts by others, but like the people I saw posting at the pledge the male creator pledge, that little picture going around. The people I saw doing it are the people who wouldn't be doing it, though. But, like, again, it was nice to see them at least try and make an effort to support. But then, like, Mike Henderson, I see the people sliding into his comments, kind of being dicks. My favorite, though, is, well, I'm a gay creator. I don't have to worry about men trying to use me. And I'm like, no, have you not read the Bryan Singer stories and stuff like that? Like,
yeah,
you're not exempt.
and we're having a lot of conversations about like gender and race and like all of these things. And I think part of it is that to kind of borrow a phrase in this instant is it's not enough to not be racist, you have to be anti-racist. So it's not enough to just not be misogynist, you have to be anti-misogynist. So like in this case, like you can't just say like, oh, I'm like a gay male creator, I'm okay, because you also have to be there as an ally for younger creators, no matter who they are. Like it doesn't just like, oh, like I'm not a straight male, like I'm good. Like you have to be better, and you have to be a good example too.
And I will say, like, comics is one of those things, and Jeff Johns, I believe, made this analogy. How you get into the industry, there's never, like, one solid way in, and once you get in one way, that door closes for someone else. Like, that loophole's no longer there. Like, he got in because he was an assistant with Richard Donner, and they were doing the big book of conspiracies, and he was helping Richard Donner with Conspiracy Theory, the movie. And the people at DC kind of like them. They're like, hey, do you want to write a book? Yeah. Like, just one of those.
And I get that story, but I think that it is easier when you're a straight white male doing that in the industry, because then even, like, if you're a woman in the industry and you're like, oh, I experienced even, I'm going to use the term casual sexism or like a microaggression, and you go and you complain about it, or you just want to talk about it, and then all of a sudden you're seen as like a bitch, or like you can't handle the boys in the industry. So like I think that this boys club of the comic book industry just needs to burn down.
I believe it was I mean, this has nothing to do with one thing, but I know Sean Gordon Murphy talked about how there's a whole Facebook Messenger group chain basically trashing him constantly of like other creators. Mm-hmm. Like, and this was before, the whole Comic Gate thing. Like,
yeah, I think like I have mixed feelings on Sean Murphy right now because of that. Because I feel like he's kind of like dog whistling to Comicsgate people. Even though it's not necessarily him going up and saying, well, we can't have forced diversity in the industry, but I feel like he's catering to the people who are saying those things. So it's tough.
I'm just saying, if you removed all that and I know all these people, when these things happen, they all have their cliques and talk about it. So like you were saying, like the perception of the person being a bitch. So that person's going to talk to some of their buddies, and like then that becomes the rumor, and then the truth. Yada yada yada. I didn't mean to yada 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 that, but etc. Like it goes on.
Yeah.
So I felt we'd be remiss without mentioning it, because I feel like we're mentioning it every week, and I do feel like these people need to be named and put out there. Hello, Stay Puff. How you doing, buddy?
Hello.
Welcome to the heavy discussion about predators in the comic industry. I feel like we're doing this every week.
every week at this point. So it's like, join us next week for like other awful people in the industry. Like, who's going to be next? And it's tough because like there's books on my shelf, and I just feel like regret looking at them right now. And I don't necessarily think that taking these books and burning them or whatever is the right thing to do. But
there's other creators on them, and I don't feel those people should be punished.
Yep.
I did like what a former editor for DC and many others. He was one of the founding people of Milestone Comics with Dwayne McDuffie, Joseph Illidge, where he had put out there that maybe there should be a limited time return for LCSs of toxic stock.
Yeah.
I like to think that
if people aren't going to buy it, then it's just going to sit on the shelves unless there's like jerks who are like, oh, I'm going to go in and support this person who is accused of sexual assault. Let me go buy this book.
The only problem is, what's the limitation of that return? Should it be within 90 days of it coming out that you get that return? Like, you can't have something that's been sitting on your shelf for years. Like, hey, I can return this.
Yeah.
It's an interesting idea, at least if it's a current book that someone put out. I feel like that would be acceptable, but I mean, DC is owned by Time Warner. It's never not Time Warner, AT&T. That's never happening.
AT&T. Yeah.
So to move on to better things, we're gonna get to
whatever it is at this point.
We're gonna get to our weekly reviews, and I will let you go first with what you have brought.
Got it. So this week was a pretty exciting week. I know that this one is going to be one of your picks. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull it out now. But we got the return of Die. So Die number 11 kind of picks up. I don't necessarily want to spoil this book for anyone who wants to read it and hasn't read the first two volumes.
All I will say is, why does everything hellacious and horrible keep happening to that girl?
Yeah.
I keep feeling worse and worse for her. Like, she has lost everything.
Yeah. And like, I really enjoyed, this is like for sure one of my favorite current series going on right now. Just all of it, the writing, the artwork. It's just such a stunningly beautiful book, and it really just like picks up where the last one left off, where we got some major reveals and kind of like picks this up. And I think that there was a sensitive subject about because even on when we talked about this on our was it the book club that we did, Die Volume 2?
Yes.
We talked about like an instance where it's like it wasn't said it was rape, but we kind of like alluded to it. And then like in this issue, it was, I think they like touched on it like, no, like that would be rape. So this one really just picks up where Volume 2 left off. So I highly recommend Die number 11. But if you haven't read the first two, then it won't make sense, but it should definitely be read.
So there was an unfolding of Ash's mental state that I felt was fascinating when she is talking to Saul. Yeah. And they finally put it out there. Ash was in love with Saul. And I was like, okay, so that answers a huge question. Because they kind of alluded, and when she's like, this is the Saul I loved, and I was like, okay.
Yeah.
But Ash's mental state, talking about, do I enjoy being this, or do I not like it, or do I not feel anything? The back and forth with the jailer, I thought was interesting.
Yeah, especially because there's some spoilers, and once again, I don't want to ruin any of that for someone. But man, it really picks up where that last volume left off and just hits the ground running.
Also, we dove into Chuck a little bit.
Yeah, and what was going on with him, and he's still the jerk that he was in the first two.
He also mentioned that if he pushes his luck, Lady Woe will come for him. So I was like, okay, so he's still cursed, I guess.
Yeah.
Fascinating issue. Like, I couldn't even like get up to go to the bathroom or get a drink because I was just like, all right, I got to finish this in one sitting.
Yeah.
It was one of those issues though. Not a lot happens, but a ton happens in the dialogue, and it's not boring like exposition or info dumps. A Hickman dump, as we call it.
The Hickman dump trademark.
It's straight up like it gut punches you constantly. And there's an interesting thing that Izzy says where she's like, Zamomo would fuck Mud if he could. And
that was kind of beautiful.
And there's a loneliness to Ash where she's like, I almost think for a second Izzy and I could be friends. And you see how like lonely Ash is. And again, his sister, the last page, it's fucking horrifying. Like it really, like, I can't understand why this shit keeps happening to this girl who all she did was go play Dungeons and Dragons with her brother after her dog died. That's all she did. Yep. And she's just been never ending, like, hammered. What was your score?
This is one of those, like, I would say on a scale of like 0 or 1 to 10, it's definitely going to be like high 8, 9. The only thing that I'm just not a huge fan of, and this is just me personally, I'm not a huge fan of when there's a lot of internal dialogue. And there was a lot of internal dialogue, and that's kind of the theme for like this character. But it works. So I would give it, it's not perfect, but I would definitely give it like a good 9 out of 10.
I feel like it wasn't internal dialogue just to have internal dialogue. Like, Ash doesn't put herself out there and can't really, like, you find out that if she uses the voice again, she won't be able to control Zamoma.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was interesting, and how, like, now she's very protective of her son, Augustus. I'm probably right in the 7, 5, 8 area on it. I should have just said it's a buy, like 100%. I mean, this is a book I can't trade weight on, and I don't really want to trade weight on. I really, really enjoyed it, and again, like, the dialogue in this made it worth it, and not a lot of action. There is some, but everything said was important in one way or another.
It's definitely building us up. Like, there's been a couple of reveals or at least one, like, kind of like fun reveal in each, like, volume 1 and volume 2. And so, like, alluding to literary characters. So I'm, like, kind of trying to piece that together. Like, who are we going to get to see in this volume? So, yeah, for sure. Each issue is going to be a pickup for this one. I'm not going to wait for the trade.
Yeah. So I read Mercy number 3.
Oh, so is that one of your picks? I didn't.
I'd feel remiss not talking about it.
I know. So for anyone who hasn't watched our other, like, videos, Mercy, put out by Image by Mirka and Dolfo. Hello.
Hey, Brendan.
So Mercy, like, it looked good. It got a lot of hype from Image, and I think that, like, everyone picked up issue 1, and neither of us really liked issue 1. Like, it didn't hit me. And then we were both like, okay, let's just go ahead and, like, hate read issue number 2. And I just still didn't get it. And so I was like, I'm not going to get it.
So once again, the art is very, very nice. It's piecemealing info. So they introduce these hunters of these pod flowering creatures. Still don't really know what it is. It's just they have to do with that mine incident at the beginning, and I guess the hunters were there, and what was released. It starts going somewhere by the end, and now I'm on that waffling. I don't know if I go to number 4 or if I just wait and try and trade read it. Maybe in one sitting it will be a better read.
Maybe.
But
I feel like
go ahead, sorry.
I feel like it's no, it's okay. I feel like it's almost like what did I read? Nomen Omen. I feel like had a lot of hype. I really like thought like seriously, like even thinking about what the premise of Nomen Omen was going to be. I'm like, oh, this is cool. And I think I like picked up some of the issues and I'm like, okay, I like this. And then I ended up buying the trade and I read it as a trade and still just fucking hated it.
I bought Nomen Omen just for the Becky Cloonan covers.
Yeah.
Because I end up buying all of them, even her Aquaman dude bro beard covers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still at like a 5 on it. Like it's getting to that point of Gideon Falls, but Gideon Falls, I'm intrigued enough to keep going. But at the same time, this one, I'm just
really?
This one, I'm just annoyed enough to keep going.
Yeah.
I don't.
I want to feel.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I feel like at this point, I'm not even like hate reading it. I'm just like, I've read the first couple issues. I feel like reading those first couple issues, I still want to pay off with Mercy. So I'm still probably, even though I just didn't like the first couple issues, I'm still going to read it just so I can maybe be like, what happened? Like, what is going on? Because I have no clue. So I wouldn't necessarily suggest that people buy it, but I know I'm still going to buy it just so maybe I can feel like I found out what was going on because I had no clue the first couple issues.
I still don't. And just to go back to Gideon Falls for a minute, Cinia posted the other day that Andrea Sorrentino's art is so ugly it makes her want to throw open her mouth and never look at it again. I was just like, Jesus Christ. Sorrentino did the art for the Joker Killer Smiles or Smile Killer that just came out.
Yeah. I didn't hate the artwork on it, but I think that it works with the weird style going on. But unpopular opinion that Sydney and I share, like Lock and Key, like hated the artwork and didn't like it with that story. So maybe, I don't know, we'll see.
Your next pick.
So what would that be? So this is my second pick, I would guess. So this is actually from last week, and I so late to the party on this one, and I totally regret it because it's totally in my wheelhouse, but ludicrous. So I picked up issue 1 and issue 2, and this is such like a wacky, weird vibe. Like I'm not going to show it on here. But like literally maybe I'll like cover it up, but like literally the first page is like this dude and like you can see his wiener hanging out. Literally that's the first page. And like, I don't know, I feel like the first page is just like a dick joke. And man, it's so weird and it's wacky, and it's wacky in a way that does remind me of Scotty Young, I Hate Fairyland, but like in an even weirder, wackier way. So issue 2 came out last week, and I haven't read issue 2, but I read issue 1, and like this is going on my pull list because it's that Jennifer brand of just weird and wacky.
I've got them on my iPad on Comixology. I haven't read them yet.
It felt nice because it's just, like I said, weird and it's fun, and I feel like with things like Die, I'm like going in and I'm like trying to like dissect it, and I'm trying to like figure out what's going on, and I have to figure out what I like about it. Like, what's the redeeming quality of like, this issue. With this, it's just straight up fun, and I needed that this week.
I will make sure to put that closer to the at least middle of my list right now to read.
Mm-hmm.
So completely different for me. I have a Marvel book, which I haven't had many lately. So I got Empire Zero.
Mm-hmm.
The main reason I got it, I really like Immortal Hulk, and Al Ewing's the writer on that, and then Pepe Larraz, who is the artist on House of X, was doing the art for it.
Mm-hmm.
The art was very good. It sets up this giant arcing event that they're gonna do. Again, the art was very nice. The writing was fairly good. The bad thing is, I know I'm not gonna pick up this whole fucking event. Like, I 100% know I'm not. I just won't, because it's just too many books involved. And like, if anything, I'll just pick up the main Empire book. But I enjoyed it. It kind of had a lot of Avengers history of events that happened in the past, like the Kotati, which are plant creatures. The Kree and the Skrulls have teamed up to try and eliminate the Kotati. Mantis is involved, so I kind of like that. Although Mantis that we see in the comic books versus the movies, completely different characters. Yeah. Colors were really nice. Again, story, we'll see where it goes. But for an intro issue, I was fairly okay with it. Probably a 6 out of 10 for me. Pick it up for the art and maybe to see if you even want to continue with this. These event books, like I'm all over. Like, I heard the new X-Men crossover is gonna be 24 fucking books, 24 issues to it. Like, I can't do it.
I feel like I'm here for it, but then I'm also like, when it comes to those things, I feel like I miss one issue and then I'm screwed. Like, I have no clue what's going on, and I'll still maybe try to like enjoy it and read it, but then it becomes like, especially when I think about Marvel still exists, right? You know, with the exception of maybe like X-Men and like some of the titles there, I feel like none of the Marvel books have really been on my radar, which is weird because I feel like Marvel exists more on my radar than even DC, but I feel like I'm even picking up more DC books now than
Immortal Hulk is the one that's been consistently good. That's the only one. Well, I mean, besides, the main X titles.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those weird things. Like, I like it. I don't love it, but for a giant event, like, it doesn't have that Hickman feel of like overarching cosmic. I mean, it's cosmic, but it's not like mind fucking cosmic
on that scale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where, like, when he did Infinity and that whole Secret War thing where they're blowing up alternate Earths. It's a lukewarm buy.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's one of those things that you might just want to wait for the event to end and just buy the giant fucking trade.
Yeah.
Your next one.
So my next one, and this is a tale in 4 stories, because that's, I have to do that. So this week there were at least 4 books that came out, like between Image, Vault, and IDW, where we got like #1 issues of things. And so out of the 4, 3 of them just like and then 1 really stood out. So from Image, we got That Texas Blood and Dead Body Road. And both of these,
I have a hot take on your second one.
Oh, neither of these landed for me, like, whatsoever. I didn't, which surprises me because normally, like, I think that what Image has done for like a little bit has created such excitement around their #1 issues, and their #1 issue is really good, and then their #2 issue is really good, and then like by issue like 5, 6, people are like meh, and they stop putting it on their pull list. These 2 issue #1s, like, I'm probably not going to pick up #2, and it's not going to be on my radar. I did not like either of these.
Dead Body Road was so middling. Like, it just, I've read it before. Like, I've read it 100 times. There's nothing original to it. There's
all the.
It's troped.
And
it's trope
honestly,
after trope
like,
after trope.
I felt like it was a what was that show about? Was it Sons of Anarchy? I felt like it was great value Sons of Anarchy. So it didn't land for me at all.
It didn't, and I have that Texas book. I didn't read it yet, but I picked it up just because Sean Phillips was involved, and that was basically it.
So I really didn't like this one either, which kind of sucked because normally I get really hyped over like anything that Image comes out. I'm like, sweet, like Image #1, I'm going to be excited this week. And then just completely was not. So then the other two titles, because like I said, this is a story in 4 parts. There was Sleeping Beauties #1, which I didn't know was, I guess, a Stephen King book. And it was pretty interesting. And I could kind of see where it was going. However, it still didn't land for me. And I think to your point, like it felt like a story that I've read before. Where if you don't know the premise to this, it's basically that there is this disease going around and like there's a global pandemic. Surprise, because we're probably going to see that theme a lot in comic books shortly. But basically what happens is it starts in Australia, and like at one point they like refer they got to go back to the $9.99 #1 trades. But with Sleeping Beauties, it starts off in Australia where like people get this like sickness and they fall asleep, and it actually only affects women. But then there's like one woman walking around and she's kind of crazy, and there's butterflies. So it was better than the other two. But I'll probably maybe trade weight on this one since it didn't absolutely blow me away.
I know people were going nuts about the Peach Momoko store variant that was coming out for Sleeping Beauties, because Peach Momoko, for some reason, collectors are going insane. Her stuff is just blowing up, and it's blowing up $100 for some of her books right now. Which she's a fantastic artist, but for me, if the book isn't, I'm more of a reader than a collector or speculator. I'm not necessarily going to like sell my stuff. I know you're a speculator, because Australia hasn't enough things that can kill you already, for sure. Sleeping Beauties will do that. But the last one, and this one was so good. I'm glad I read this one last because I really needed to pick me up after reading these. But Bleed Them Dry, which is published by Vault. And it's basically in the future. Like, I think it's set in the year 3000. And there are ninja vampires. And even though I know it sounds like not stupid, but it sounds like, 17-year-old kids like, I'm gonna pitch ninja vampires to Vault and they're gonna publish me. No, I'm serious. Like, this one was actually really good, and I thoroughly enjoyed this one a lot. So Bleed Them Dry, published, did I say was it Vault Comics that did this one? Yeah, published by Vault. I think this one is by far like the best story that I picked up. So ninja vampires. Who put out Sleeping Beauties?
IDW.
Ninja vampires. Honestly, I'm like, seriously. Okay.
I know, like, and I feel like ninja vampires feels like something that I would have seen on the shelf like 15, 20 years ago, and it just would have been bad and not fun. But I actually really like the characters in this. I really like what's going on. And it's set in the year 3000, and it sounds like America is just like a wasteland at this point. And it's set in Japan, and seriously, like, this one was really good. I'll probably end up, out of all of the things that I got, this one's going to end up on my pull list because I know that I'm going to need to know like what happens, and so I'll definitely be picking this up again.
But Vigilante put, like, I just imagined that was the reply of when they put their pitch in, going, Ninja Vampires, go on.
Yeah, normally, like, you know, when you think about that, like, elevator pitch, it's like you've got, you know, a decision maker in an elevator with you for 30 seconds. Give me a rundown of the story. But with this, like, Ninja Vampires, it was good. It was really good. And the art was really good, and it, like, worked because it was dark and it's gritty, and it almost reminded me of, like, a city that, like, Blade Runner would be set in. So that was my last pick. I do have another one or two more to talk about, but I'll let you go with yours.
Okay, so I totally intended on reading The Plunge 4, and I fell asleep this morning, so I did not get to. So I kind of already reviewed this on my Instagram, but I'm just going to go ahead and talk about it. Batman 93. James Tynion, Guillaume March, the prelude to Joker War. It had the most disappointing reveal of who the designer was, or is, or what they were. They do unravel what all the plots were that the designer had created for them. There's a Harley and Punchline showdown of Hench Girl versus Groupie. And that's basically, they say that Punchline's basically a glorified Joker groupie. Yeah. I'm going to use the word middling. Like, it wants to be so much more than it is. And I felt like it falls flat in every way. But there's action in it. So it's not like the person whose name I'm not going to say, with Batman just getting in touch with his feelings at the beach while doing push-ups with Catwoman sitting on his back with a Tom Selleck mustache. That happened. That legit happened in an issue. I'm not even kidding.
I feel like, to be honest, this is why, I don't know, when it comes to, like, superhero stories, like I've said, I feel like I've read it all. And I feel like no matter what new thing they push on me, it's going to be, I don't know, I'm not going to be shocked. I'm not going to be surprised. And I'm just not going to be generally delighted. So,
to be honest, since the Scott Snyder Court of Owls, that was like the last one that really caught my imagination, with having this whole underground society running around that's been, like, basically controlling Gotham. And then the weirdness of Grant Morrison's run, which I really liked. It's kind of hard to, like, wrap me up in excitement again. Where I got excited for a minute about Punchline, but I was like, oh, okay, well, that's the speculator in me talking.
Yeah. I think that, like, when Dark Knight's Metal came out, there was a lot of excitement, but I recommend Transformers vs. Terminator issue 2 came out today, and the story is very true to both.
I'll have to check out issue 1.
Yeah. I feel like when it comes to a lot of the, like, big events that DC's been having with the Year of the Villains and the Batman Who Laughs and, like, all of these things, it's like, and now with Death Metal, which I ended up picking up, and I didn't, like, really read it, but I browsed through it. I feel like it just tries to go extreme, like Batman on steroids, directed by, like, Michael Bay, and
designed by Rob Liefeld, directed by Michael Bay.
100%. And I don't know, maybe I'm just not that target audience. Like, I like extreme stuff, and, like, I listen to extreme music and watch extreme, but it's not getting me, and it's not doing anything. I think the only superhero story that I'd be interested in now would be a wholesome Superman story that spreads hope.
All-Star Superman.
Yeah.
That 100%, and also Superman for All Seasons.
Yeah.
But I don't think DC's about that right now. They haven't been in a while.
Yeah. I think that we'll see some of those things, but even the more like, we're seeing, like, younger Superman stuff, I think, which is more, it is a little bit wholesome, but yeah.
A little bit. Again, All-Star Superman, like, that is, I'd say, like, the uber Superman of like he's just so damn like wholesome. Which
Yeah.
Grant Morrison, of course, is like, yes, that's what I'm going to write. Wholesome Superman with a sci-fi twist.
Yeah. Yeah. Which to me, like, that's not what Superman has always been, but kind of. It's low key sci-fi. It's not sci-fi. It's not a hard sci-fi with 2Ds. It's just sci-fi.
And also, let me remind people that Superman, his first issue, he was doing social justice. He was beating up domestic abusers, taking down corrupt officials. So just throwing it out there that,
No.
but there's no politics
No
or social
politics
issues in comic books. Go ahead with your two that you wanted to talk about.
So I have two things that I want to talk about. I've been really trying to, especially like after quarantine and during quarantine, I've been really pushing myself to buy books from more diverse authors and just see different stories. And like, even though my normal brand is just read different stories, but even just like pushing myself to read from more diverse creators, not just stories. And one that I recently bought that I really, really love, Sankofa's Embrace. This one, man, it's basically like if Black Panther was a D&D adventure. Like Antoine, I'm probably going to like mess some of this up, but Antoine Dijon Mitchell is the creator, writer, illustrator, and is like, seriously, this one absolutely blew me away. I got the first two issues. Right now you can pre-order the second issue, I think, but I got a preview issue of issue number 2, and seriously, like, Black Panther D&D RPG. I felt it, and I really, really, like, I'm on this adventure. Sankofa's Embrace.
Are you picking up the Philadelphia trade in 2 weeks, or are you doing
yeah,
the single?
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you were still buying the singles or not.
Yeah. I have the. I didn't get the last single issue, because I had like just started my pull list and I didn't get it like before.
Yeah.
But I'll definitely be picking up the trade on Philadelphia.
7th or 8th, I think. I can't remember what day.
So this, so good. Please check it out. I really, really liked. If you can't tell, I really enjoyed this one. But then the other one that I want to talk about is a book. The creator reached out to me and was like, "Hey, like, you know, would you want to read a copy of it?" And I'm like, "Sure." I enjoy like reading things before they come out. But this one is called Dryfoot, and it's published.
That's
by
the PDF
Mad
you
Cave
sent to
Studios.
me.
Yeah,
I read it,
and it was basically described like the elevator pitch is Miami Vice meets 4 Kids Walk Into a Bar, and I hadn't read bank. 4 Kids Walk Into the Bar.
Walk into a bank.
4 Kids Walk Into a Bank. So it's like 4 Kids Walk into the bank, into a bank meets Miami Vice, and it's Dynamite. Ooh, Sacred 6. Okay, Dynamite. I'm gonna. I actually have a pen. I'm gonna write that down. But so I read the first issue of Dryfoot, and it's set in Miami, and like the characters, they felt real to me. And as someone who grew up in South Florida, like, I felt a lot of this. And because it is in 1984, like, they're using walkie-talkies in a way that, like, I forgot that cell phones didn't exist, and the way they use like walkie-talkies is just kind of adorable and relatable. Like, oh, did you make it home safe? Out. So yeah, I Jared Lujan is the author, and I highly recommend it. Dryfoot by Mad Cave Studios.
So when I started reading it, like when they're introducing the crime lord at the beginning, I was like, "Ah, fuck, I don't know about this."
Yeah.
And then we actually
like, I'm not gonna like this. Yeah.
When we got into the actual characters, like the interaction between Mary and her grandmother or mother.
I think it was her grandmother.
Yeah, that interaction. She's like calling her a terrible liar and stuff. I really like that, and her character in general. Yeah, it was about like a quarter of the way, and I was like, this really feels like four kids walk into a bank, and I'm like, weirdly at times, like I'm not sure 100%, but like the digital of it all kind of, I was noticing more like the digital coloring and everything, and I don't know if it was digitally colored, but it kind of looked like it the way that it popped. But I read it on digital, so maybe it was just the iPad screen kind of. It's something that I'm interested in. Like again, like after the first like page or two, I was like, oh boy, I don't know about this. And by the end, I was like, okay, like I kind of like these characters. I know it doesn't sound like a ringing endorsement, but like from what it started as and what it ended as, like I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, and you're right. It's like it immediately like sets up this like villain, and I'm like, man, if the story like follows this person, like I know I'm not gonna like it, and it didn't. So.
And Mad Cave is a label I don't really have a lot of interactions with. Like I don't.
Yeah.
Doesn't usually end up in my lists or piles. Like rarely ever.
Yeah. So I was pleasantly surprised because sometimes I read things and I'm just like, you can tell that there's a reason that this wasn't published by, say, like Image or Vault, and it might go to a studio that's not as like big. But surprisingly enough, more creator-owned stuff, like Scout Comics and that's based in South Florida. They're a publishing company that I really enjoy. They've got a lot of great titles. So,
I want to go back to one. I don't know if you read or not. Did you read the last issue of Excellence?
What was that, issue number 7?
Yeah, 6 or 7. I can't remember what issue, but man, it was fucking great.
So like I think that week when I'm looking at my pile right here, I think when that one came out, it was the same week that
Bitterroot came out.
Bitterroot came out, and I think that Bitterroot was more on my radar that week, and I had like just finished rereading Bitterroot, and it had been a minute since I had read like Excellence again, so I was a lot more excited for like Bitterroot that week. But Excellence,
it's been solid.
I feel like a lot of comparisons have been made to Excellence of like Harry Potter, and I'm just like, nah.
No, I don't get that at all. It's something completely different.
It really is. Especially the way it's so modern with what it does, where like it does talk about like racial issues, which need to not be shied away from. So it does a really good job of doing that and making like culture in comic books.
The way I'd say, like, if Christopher Nolan decided to do like a wizard movie, this is the closest it would be. But if like Antoine Fuqua was casting it, really, like, it's one of those books that when it first came out, I was like, I don't know. And I picked out the first issue. I was like, okay, I liked it enough. I'll pick up the second. And like each issue, it's actually gotten better the more that world unfolds. So we're going to move on to our second subject of the episode, and that would be Nightmare on Elm Street 2. We watched the documentary about Mark Patton called Scream Queen, and we decided, since it is Pride Month, and this is considered one of the most gay movies according to IMDb, and what, Mark Patton reading comments, which were fucking horrible during that documentary.
Yeah.
So we decided to do that, and we'll do one other maybe we should do Hellraiser, because we both talked about for the next one, since it's on the LGBT like queer movie list on Shudder. Maybe we'll do that next to end the month.
Yeah. I have like thoughts and feelings about Nightmare on Elm Street 2 being like, if it's considered the gayest, I feel like it's only rated the gayest horror movie, one, by straight people, and two, if that's the gayest movie that we get, like, man, it's disappointing. And the movie itself isn't bad. Like, is it one of the best horror movies? No, but I enjoyed the Scream Queen documentary a lot more than I enjoyed like rewatching this afterwards.
So now that you like kind of know like issues with the movie, did the subtext pop out to you more than, you know, like I watched it as a child and I was like, what are they talking about? And I watched it, I was like, oh.
Not necessarily, because especially after now I'm so here for this. Yeah. So I completely disagree with that. I wanted to, maybe it's because I wanted to go into the movie and be like, yes, like give me queer horror.
Hold on. Vigilante, does that actually exist?
Yeah. Because I feel like I need to see gay Dracula,
like no, for real, like does this exist?
Because that might be like our next one.
Yeah, I need to know that this exists, or like, and also before you said, is it porn? Because I'm not reviewing a porn movie.
I'll still watch it. I'll review a porn movie. I'll review it.
Sorry, I just saw that. I was like, wait, hold up. Yes, from 1983. Okay. All right, I'm going to look for this on IMDb and figure out if this. Okay, sorry to completely derail you.
We get derailed all the time. But okay, so my thought on it was that after watching Scream Queen, and then going and watching Nightmare on Elm Street 2, I wanted there to be a lot more like gay subtext. And one of the things that the documentary mentions is that when you grow up queer, gay, like transgender, like if you're just outside of, or if you feel like you're outside of the cultural norm, you become a scavenger for things that you feel like you identify with. And this movie, to me, like it does do it. Like I enjoyed the scene at the like S&M. I didn't see it as much as like an S&M bar as I saw it as like a goth club, because like I go to goth clubs and like it looked more like that to me, because there is like an integration of like S&M and like goth culture. So I did see it as that, not necessarily very, very queer. However, if this is the gayest horror movie that we have, like it means that there's such a lack of queer representation in movies. Because like in the director of Nightmare on Elm Street 2 said explicitly, before he got credit for doing the gayest movie,
the writer,
he said, I didn't write this as a homoerotic movie. I made this as a homophobic movie that should be shown in queer conversion, like gay therapy. And the moral of the story is that if you are gay and you just need the right woman to save you. And like watching it with that interpretation just made me like fucking sad, because queer people deserve better. I don't know how else to say that, but like queer people, like even going on Shudder and the queer section that they have, queer horror, like was so horribly lacking. It's literally like Hellraiser's on there, and the only reason why Hellraiser's on there is
Clive
because
Barker.
of Clive Barker, and that's it. And we need like explicitly queer characters that aren't just tragic characters that like the queer person dies because that's the moral of the story, is that they're one of the first to die because they get punished for being queer or outside of the cultural norm. So hot take on it. That's it.
So on this viewing, after watching that documentary and knowing what happened to the actor who played Jesse, my heart kind of broke a little bit more watching it and seeing the scenes that he said that, you know, basically he felt were outing him. And it's rough at times. There are some weird fucking things that happen in this movie, like the bird flying and exploding in flames, like for no fucking reason.
Yeah.
I 100% like thought that was a gay leather daddy bar. Like there's no, or S&M club, whatever it is. And the coach, that weird death he had, like getting whipped with the jump ropes and everything and getting balls thrown out of it. Again, there's a lot of subtext. Do I think it's a gay movie?
I think that yeah.
It's only gay if you're looking for it. Like, and you kind of like that part where he's dancing. Like, I see where they put it in because Risky Business had come out. Was it really awkward? Yes, 100%.
But to me, like that to me, like seeing like a young kid a teenage kid in their room dancing to some funky music doesn't mean you're gay. It's like, so when I was 16, this movie came out and it just came on to terms with my own sexuality. This movie was a godsend because it showed things on screen that I'd never seen before as a young gay. Like 100%.
The scavenger mentality you were
saying again. Yeah. We're so starved for any kind of representation, especially in horror. There is a documentary that I just watched called Disclosure, and it basically goes through the same thing about like trans identity, and that even though there may be like good representation of trans identities on screen, a lot of it is like subtext, and a lot of the story is just, it's not written by a transgender person. There's not a lot of transgender people in like the production, like direction, writing, any of it. And hardly ever are trans people cast in these movies. So then there's just erasure. I think that there are some things that you see, like you do see the coach and like you see his ass, and like, as someone who would enjoy a male ass on screen, like 100%, like get it. But if this is like the gayest movie we can come up with, like we need better representation.
Well, when Grady and Jesse were like wrestling on the baseball field, like immediately bare ass, and I'm like, who pulls down another guy's pants in a fight? Like I was just like, what is going on? Like, again, that's just me like randomly like musing, going, I've been in fights, and I've never once gone to pull a guy's pants down, like, during a fight, like, not once.
Yeah. I think that, like, you know, if you go on IMDb and you read the comments, and
they're horrible.
People are it's disgusting, and I think that people are using "it's the gayest film" as an insult, as calling someone gay in that sense has been an insult, and I'm just going to keep going back. If this is like the best representation that we can come up with, like we need better. I'm very curious if this would ever be one of those movies that would get a remake and make it like explicitly queer, or if we're going to see, you know, what if Mark Patton's character was actually gay on screen? What if we got to see that? Would it have been better?
I'd say the seduction by Freddy would have been a little bit maybe more over the top, because kind of when he's trying to get Jesse to like be with him, there is a bit of a seduction, I would say. Not
Yeah.
like over the top, it's, you know, subtle, but there it is a seduction for the most part. I mean, even when they said like they took putting the knife in the mouth.
Yeah.
One of the things that I also like, how for what he became a negative in his life, he turned later on into a huge positive of going out and doing those talks, and he's kind of owning the movie now.
Yeah.
And you know how he's dealt with being HIV positive, and you know, dealing with all the things like, and now he's kind of a face for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to give him Mark Patton a lot of credit for putting himself out there. And, you know, after being secluded in Mexico for years and not knowing like the second life of this movie, I recommend watching that documentary if you're at all interested in it, because I mean, it's heartbreaking, but there is kind of a positive end to it, like a spin.
And I think what was really cool, like I loved seeing the drag queens who were dressed up as Freddy. Like that was fun because I think it's something that we don't necessarily get to see a lot in not necessarily mainstream like drag culture, but I love horror and I love drag. So, but you also have to consider the times. This is directly post Reagan, and the AIDS crisis was still incredibly current. That this movie got through it all was a small miracle for sure.
And I think also during this time is when Margaret Thatcher was trying to have the gay conversion camps in England as well.
Yeah. And so with Mark Patton and what he like, I think that what he was going through like on screen and dealing with that like nightmare, and then with because his partner at the time contracted AIDS and was outed, and so he did have to escape because, you know, what was going on like is horrific. And I think we do forget, as like modern queer culture, we do forget the AIDS crisis that happened, and that's unfortunate.
I will say that he is a better screamer than Jamie Lee Curtis.
You know, that's one thing, like whenever they're like, oh, like the scream was girly, it's like, no, the scream was fine. That was one thing that they're like, oh, you couldn't tell that like the scream was so gay. And it's like, really? I don't know. Just horrific comments, people calling it the gayest horror movie.
I will say that like he 100%, there's that scene where the love interest is talking to him and he's like covered in blood. He's like, you don't understand. And I'm just like, oh, he's a soap opera actor. He shot too far. Like soap operas would have been where he could have been like just eating all the scenery up. Like that dude was chewing it. Like, oh, he would, but like, I don't know how I would act if I was covered in blood and this girl's like, I love you. You're fine. Yeah. Like, what are you talking about?
I feel like that was completely, like, it's appropriate because that's one of the things that I don't like about movies whenever they introduce or that they allude to romance like that. I don't think that that it's an appropriate time for romance. Like, and that's one thing that I appreciated about the end of the movie was that at the end they're in the bus and everyone was like, hey, like that was a fun party. Yeah. Like for them, they just got drunk, but then he's basically going through like PTSD because all of a sudden the bus is driving fast and he's like, stop the bus. And they're like, nah, calm down. It's fine. But like, and obviously like, you know, it goes off the road and, you know, Freddy will be back. But if you had gone through a horrific traumatic event like that and everyone else around you was acting normal, you don't go back to normal. Like you're suffering from like trauma at that point. So I do think that like him getting overly upset at the end of the movie, like that was very much, I would say, like true to character or like true to what may have happened.
I found the IMDb summary of Gay Racula. This is pretty fantastic. Gay Pornography, 1983, adult horror comedy. Count Drac is back, and this time he's necking more than just Stella. Count Gaylord stalks the pubs within L.A. for the hunkiest victims to ever succumb to lust, as well as his enemy, the Marquis de Pint.
Ooh.
Wow.
So I feel like that's probably like I'm gonna hop off this and I'm gonna hop on that, man. Like
I don't even know where you would find it. It's from 1983, so like, who knows?
I might have to like buy it on something. I mean, I don't own anything. I don't own like any maybe like 2 movies I have just for like nostalgia's sake. I have on DVD. Everything else is digital, so I'm sure I can find it digital somewhere. I have some CD-ROMs somewhere.
Not on floppy.
No, maybe I'll be able to find it on floppy disk.
It'll just be your fanfic.
Yeah, my fanfic, my floppy disk fanfic.
So I actually did think about a movie that actually has a queer heroine in it. That's a horror movie that I forgot all about. Did you ever watch High Tension?
You know, that was it a French film or
Australian? I think that was with the crazy guy in the outback.
You know, I think that movie came out in maybe like 2005, 2006, so it's probably been 15 years since I watched that one.
It just clicked. I was like, what are like horror movies with like queer protagonists? And I was like, oh, like I forgot about that movie because it's been forever since I've watched it too.
Yeah. One of the movies that was on the Shudder's like queer horror section was a short film called A Quiet Room. And that one I think that out of all the ones that I ended up watching as part of that, because like I said, there's only like 5 movies on there, and for queer horror.
Okay, but like Sleepaway Camp.
Sleepaway Camp.
Have you watched it, Jen?
Once again, it's probably been about 20 years since I've watched Sleepaway. So I've watched it. I watched it when I was like 12, 13 years old. So
okay,
it's been a while.
For anyone who has not seen it, someone dumped the entire movie on YouTube. For when it came out, you have to remember when it came out, it has one of the most shocking endings. Because, like, no movie ever did that. Also, subtle little story about it. So the person they got to be the killer at the end and do the nude reveal was a townie that they got drunk and were like, hey, do you want to be in a movie? And was completely inebriated, and they just threw a wig on and is completely mortified and humiliated and has tried to sue them about the movie repeatedly. But they got him to sign a waiver even though he was inebriated.
Oh, well, it's kind of like, can you really consent when you're intoxicated? And no. So I think he has every right to sue.
Yeah, and I can't talk about it without revealing the ending, but look it up on YouTube if you just want to go to the spoilers. It's interesting, and again, you have to remember it's like 1983, 1984, so stuff like that was very not in the ordinary. Where now I think the crowd would be like, I mean, sure, okay.
It wouldn't be shocking. You know, since we're talking about like queer representation in horror, I don't necessarily want to give a shout out to like glorify it, but it too, specifically, I can't remember the character, his name in it, but he's played by Bill Hader.
He was Richie Tozier.
Richie, and you know, it's not necessarily alluded to, but I think that like when I think about queer horror and like the representation, I feel like that movie, even though I enjoyed it too for the most part, I hated the queer representation in it because the way that it treats his queerness as once again, something to be afraid of, something to be ashamed of. And I get internalizing that because that is something that happens to gay people. But in the beginning, basically, we're introduced to like a happy, loving gay couple in the first couple moments of it too, and they're murdered. And
which I remember in the book, I read it, and while jarring, actually seeing it on screen when I got super uncomfortable. It's like, oh wow, I've read this a million times, but actually seeing it happen on screen made me so much more uncomfortable. I mean, it should be uncomfortable anyway.
It is, but that just like that part infuriated me because once again, it's like the only time that you get to see queer people living openly and they get murdered and they make it as like explicit part of why they were murdered. And it just, once again, like as a queer person, you see that and you internalize it and you're like, that's something to be ashamed of. That's something that I can get murdered. And it just, not necessarily that I think that because it specifically left out some other horrific things from the book that I'm not going to talk about, but they left out some other horrific things in the original book that I'm so glad that they left out. They still alluded to it a little bit, but to me,
Patrick Hostetter's
stop killing queer characters.
Story was oof.
Yeah,
like he was a disturbing character in the books, and like in the movie, they're like, you know what, we're just not even getting into it with him, like him killing his little brother.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like, I think that the history of like queer and horror has not been kind to queer people, and neither has real life. So it goes back to like whenever people are like, well, that's just part of like real life. Movie called the Celluloid Closet. And it does after seeing that's it does go into how even though it may feel like there is like queer storylines, but they get punished for being queer. Like that ends up being the moral of the story is that, the queer person dies at the end or they have tragedy, which sucks. It sucks. Iron Master by Umberto Lenzi had a gay lead named Sam Pascoe. He was an openly gay porn star, and that destroyed his movie career. That sucks. So I don't know. I want to see more like
people who got outed and like kind of destroyed their careers. Except Rock Hudson. People didn't find out till very late, and maybe he was protected.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that was very calculated because there would be instances of him being seen with women publicly. So, people made up their own stories about that. So I think that was very much like a PR thing.
Liberace too. I remember they do the interviews. He was like, "Oh, have you found the woman you're looking for?" And I'd be like, "Oh, not yet."
Yeah. Yep.
I'm still like in my mind thinking of like horror movies or even movies that like had like very like positive queer representation, like because even Blue is the Warmest Color, like I liked, but I don't know how. I mean, it was more about the love than the actual anything else.
Yeah. I think that you really have to dig deep for it, and it's really going to be more indie than mainstream.
Definitely.
Yeah. So hopefully we see a lot more of this soon, and it doesn't just feel like exploitation of those stories.
I mean, Dune had a little bit.
Once again, I think that is a horrible. Once again, it goes to the gay person is the villain in the story, and I think that it was something to say with Doris Day standing. Yeah, that was very calculated. That was definitely a PR thing. When it comes to Dune and like the queer representation there, it was more of we're going to make this person like a pedophile, and that's going to signify his villainy, like explicitly. So I think that I know that like right now Dune is going through some reshoots, I don't know what they are currently doing, but I think that with a lot of things in mind, I don't think that they're going to pull that with the Harkonnens.
It might be subtext more than anything else. I doubt they're going to show it. Let's see.
I think that they would be very the movie is Cthulhu with a gay protagonist. Okay, I feel like I don't think that I've watched that one before. I feel like I have, but
interesting. I might have to look that up. I'm always good for a good Cthulhu movie.
Cthulhu.
So, I know we didn't really do a deep dive into the movie, but it wanted to have more of a discussion and dialogue. And chat, you've added some things I have not seen or thought about. And Ren's, your perspective is greatly appreciated. Having you grow up during that time in this movie, actually having what Jen said, like if you were looking to scavenge just anything from a movie and you were that audience, I really appreciate you sharing your story with us. That's great. It's weird that I think the mythos of this movie are more impressive than the actual movie itself.
Yeah.
Where it developed this life of its own that really not earned.
Yeah. And once again, I think that we can go back and we can like dissect it. And I think that if we go and we dissect any movie with the parameters of like a high-pitched scream is girly and that, you know, that means it's gay. Like, I think that we could go and we could do this to a lot of movies. It's unfortunate that it had to do it to a movie where the real life actor was going through these things. But like, I enjoyed the movie. I disliked the movie for a lot of reasons, but ultimately, like, I don't think that it was like the worst movie ever made. Like,
it was the last Freddy that he was like actually sinister and not like joking all the time.
Yeah.
I actually had a friend when we watched Scream, and he's like, I think Stu's in love with Billy. And I was like, really? You got that from that? I'm like, I just thought they were bros. It's like, no, I 100% think Stu is in love with him. I was like, that's a leap.
I mean, maybe there's probably like fanfic of it out there somewhere.
Oh, there's fanfic for everything.
For like, everything.
Everything.
Bless.
Some of it is horrific. Like, real. But for those who are into Poe and Finn, there is a lot of it out there, apparently, from what I hear.
Don't even talk to me about the last Star Wars movie.
I'm not talking to you about the
That's like my...
I'm not trying to trigger you.
I'm there. I wanted to see Poe and Finn, and like when we're talking about queer representation, like, you know, it was like, oh, like we get this like same-sex kiss in a Star Wars movie, and it was like a peck. And I think that like we can do so much better for queer representation, and it's just not happening. Gay bars used to screen the movie every Halloween. I saw it there during my first outing in a gay bar. Nightmare 2. Aww.
Which Mark Patton said, like, in the one documentary, he's like, yeah, I saw that scene of me dancing when I was at a gay bar in L.A. Let's see what else.
Warner Pochath, he was also in a Dario Argento movie. And he died of AIDS in the arms. Sorry, I'm writing this one down too.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what Argento movie he was in, because I've watched a lot of Argento movies. And I 100% ordered that box set, the Jodorowsky.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I just had to. I've been wanting to watch his movies, and I was like, a lot of his movies, I was like, for $70, I'll just take the hit.
Yeah. I may need to buy, if there's like a digital version of all three of because it was what, El Topo?
I can't remember the other. El Topo is the one that like is like his masterpiece.
Yeah.
Which it would have been interesting
Holy
if
Mountain.
Yes, it would be interesting if someone went back and turned the Inkle into a just straight movie, but it's been picked apart so much.
Yeah, but I think that it's still like it's still its own original like idea. One thing that I like about like the Inkle, and that I don't feel like we see all the time in sci-fi movies, is that we don't. I know this is like going off on a tangent, whatever. But thinking about the Inkle, like it's very bright. It's like a bright sci-fi movie where a lot of sci-fi is like dark and gritty.
Muted.
And even though it's muted, and even though like the Inkle, I feel like it's still set in a dystopia. It's like a brightly lit dystopia. So I would really like to see a bright dystopian sci-fi movie, if that makes sense.
I mean, The Fifth Element was kind of bright. I didn't.
Kind of, but it's still like grungy because like you see the scene in the city where like, you know, all the cars and everything. And then there's a lot of like space junk when they're going to like the airport thing. Like, I just feel like there's like lots of moments where there's like junk where like I want to see the dystopia that's like clean looking.
Well, that's going to be America soon.
That'll be what?
America soon.
Oh.
The way it's going.
Yeah.
Or, well, Florida's still going to be dirty. Never mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think we're pretty much done with this movie. I've watched it enough now. I can take a break and don't want to watch it. I even watched the documentary Never Sleep Again to get other little facts.
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna find a movie for next week. We're just going to have to come to an agreement on one. Thank you, Chad, again for giving us all these interesting facts and recommendations, because this is stuff that's never really crossed my my list of stuff. So we did pick our book for next month. It is Black Science by Rick Remender and Matteo Scalera. So that will be interesting. The Dune Over will be starting soon. I don't know exactly when, but it's going to happen. So it'll be chapter by chapter. We got to get with Cinia to discuss all that. And as always, check out our other co-host, Gambit at Gambit Inc. He's still doing commissions. He's still bogged down, and now that he's returned to work, very tired, very sleepy. And do you have anything coming up on your channel?
I put a like call out on my Patreon of like, hey, what should I do? So I have a couple of videos that I'm like mulling over, and I've got like half written because I like to do scripts for my videos. And if you did watch, so I did talk about it a little bit on our stream for We Can Never Go Home, but I ended up with like a lot of books. Like I just went on like a book buying thing, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to try to read 100 graphic novels in a month. And I actually ended up getting some vacation time in July. So I will have about a week where I don't like, you know, I just have the completely day free so I can read. But the goal is to read at least 3 or 4 comic or graphic novels every single day. So I'm going to document my read marathon descent into madness, lighthousing the shit out of some comic books and graphic novels. And I'll probably mostly document this on Patreon, sporadically update on maybe Instagram and then YouTube as well.
I still...
You laugh because you know that at one point I'm just going to go like batshit nuts, batshit crazy, whatever. I'm just going to like have a complete meltdown, and I think after this I'm not going to read like another graphic novel for like months.
At least once a month.
Yeah, just one a month after this.
Just for our show.
Yeah.
I
so
just
find me on Patreon to, watch my document of my descent into madness. I'm going to start it in July, so a couple days from now.
How can they get to your Patreon?
It's Comic Books Will Break Your Heart. If you follow me on Instagram, where it's Comic Books Will Break My Heart, and you go to my link tree, Patreon is like way at the bottom, so you can find it there.
I just wait for the one night I'm at work and I just get this message in the middle of the night, like, where I like, why is she awake? Because 3-hour difference, and it's just gonna be like, I don't know why I started this. This is too much. Because even Natalie was just like, I can do 50 maybe, like 100's too much.
Yeah. I mean, I also, like, I don't have kids to take care of right now. I'm not like commuting to work or anything. So, when I think about, I'll maybe spend several hours on social media, just kind of like mindlessly scrolling, or spending an hour or so at night just watching TV. I could just take that time and substitute it with this. I have it planned out. Like, I have a list of like each day I'm going to like read this one and this one and this one. I think that I'll probably mess around with it a little bit. There may be some days where I'm like, oh, I'll go ahead and read like 6 or 7 today and be ahead of the game. And then there'll be days where I'm like, okay, today I can do 1. So we'll see.
The funniest thing was Gambit even trying to throw his hat in the ring. I'm like, you won't even get 5 done. I don't even know why you're trying. Like, just, you couldn't even read 5 comics to get through the last episode.
So I'm an extremely, like, I'm a competitive person. Like, I'm a lazy as shit procrastinator, but I'm competitive when it comes to things. So if anyone wants to, like, I don't even want to say compete, but if anyone wants to like challenge me and be like, you can't read 100, like, bet I will. So
I could probably do 6.
With it.
I could probably do 60.
I think that, like, truly as human beings, like seriously, I think that human beings, we don't give ourselves enough credit. I'm ready to rock and roll with it,
Well, between my work and overtime and everything else, my sleep schedule, and then this, it's kind of like, too conservatively would be like, I could do like my days off though. So the last time I took vacation for a week, I read the entire Batman and Detective run. I managed to get a digital of the entire run all the way up to New 52 of both, and I finished them both in a week. It broke me.
Yeah.
I had like random facts just jumping through my head for a week of like, wait, Nocturna appeared in this, and then hold on.
Yeah.
So, and then the crossovers got messy.
Think I need to. Yeah, I think that, like, I also need to strategically, like, on my list, I'm trying to be methodical with it, and I'm trying to incentivize myself, I guess, with a couple of them. Like, one day I think that I have myself reading Redneck, American Vampire, and like maybe another story. So I'm like, okay, maybe I'll make it a theme day. And then there's one, I think I'm going to rearrange it. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to read all Image books this week, but Image just dominates the list entirely. So,
well, if you make it to digital stuff on Comixology Unlimited, they put all of the Gotham Central on there. So totally worth reading.
Funny story. So all of these that I'm reading are going to be ones that I have physical copies of. I do have Comixology Unlimited, and I am maxed out on the books that I'm allowed to have. So I may need to do a month of just my Comixology reading. So maybe I'll need to take some, like, that'll be months from now. So we'll see if I'm still here after this.
Hey, just the Rican in his comics. What's up, Rod? How you doing, brother? I swear someday we will show up on your channel for the community shout out. I actually have a couple of Sundays coming up that I'm going to be off, so we'll have to get together on that, Rod. Like always, you're doing great work on your channel, and love it when I can stop in. And also, thank you for the nice messages every now and again. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And of course, you show up right when we're getting ready to wrap up because I have to get ready for work. But I'd like to thank everybody who participated in today's show and chat. Of course, the people who have been here have been great, and appreciate your interaction. And sending all the love and thoughts to D Comic Queen as she recovers from COVID with her family. Wishing you the best. Love you, Nat. Thank you for everything. You are one of my favorite people. And Cinia, keep fighting. And comic people, seriously, be better. I'm sick of doing stories about y'all going after young ladies, older ladies, pressuring them, grooming. Like, the fact I know what grooming is irritates the fuck out of me. The fact I know what a Bluebeard is really fucking irritates me.
Thanks, Warren Ellis.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it hurts. It hurts.
I don't know what a fix is for what's wrong. I don't know if there's just one fix. I know, like, Kelly Sue, I watched her video, and even she just, like, they're smarter people than me, like, but something has to be in place.
I think I have like 3 or 4 suggestions, and maybe this needs to be another episode, but I've got 3 or 4 suggestions that I think are going to work, but that'll be another conversation.
Rod
just got subbed 2 times at work, and I came back.
Great. Stay healthy, brother. You're in the medical field, if I recall. So, like, you're doing the good work, man. Like, just stay healthy and your family.
Real life hero.
Appreciate you. And coconut beats COVID. Oh, Rod's a coconut. Never mind.
Coconut beats COVID.
COVID. Okay, so we have to get going. Again, thank you to everybody, and join us next week where I don't know what we're doing or what movie we're doing or what dark corner of the web we might end up talking about. That happens a lot. We end up talking about Florida being Fury Road the other episode, and that we might be living in Black Mirror. Could be.
Yeah, 100. That's the only bright thing. It's like, okay, I'm living in a Black Mirror episode. That's something to look forward to, right? But
yeah, I don't want to say there's been a lot of bad Black Mirror episodes of, like, horrible things happening, and haven't we all suffered enough?
Yeah.
Anyway, everybody live long, prosper, stay healthy. And to those still not doing it, wear your goddamn mask and fucking wash your hands.
Wash your hands 6 feet apart. 2
masks. It's not hard. I really appreciate that, Rod. Thank you. Sometimes the internet does wonderful things, and it somehow brought us all together. And it's been fantastic. And I keep saying I'm going to end this episode, and it keeps going. But take care, everybody. I am hitting the end broadcast now. In 3, 2, 1. Bye.
Bye.
And